In the wake of Eric Schneiderman's resignation as Attorney General of New York, some of his longtime friends on the left are professing shock. You've heard them. We just can't believe it, they say. How could a man so publicly committed to feminism beat women? It just doesn't make sense. But of course, it makes perfect sense. Self-righteousness is always a marker for secret creepiness. The people yelling the loudest are usually hiding the most. Keep that in mind the next time you hear some Democratic politician lecturing you about your moral inferiority. That's the guy you need to watch carefully. Chances are he's up to something awful behind closed doors. Hypocrisy isn't just a feature of modern liberalism, it's the heart of modern liberalism. Ever wonder how people who advocate for abortion can say they stand for children? How a movement that demonizes an entire race can claim to oppose racism? The same way Al Gore can travel by private jet while trying to ban your SUV. Because consistency does not matter to the left. Only virtue matters. We're good people, therefore we must rule. You are not, therefore you must obey. Al Gore doesn't believe he's a hypocrite. Eric Schneiderman probably doesn't think he is either. You can't commit sin if your intentions are pure, and liberals believe their intentions are the purest. If that sounds like theology and not public policy, that's because it is theology. Modern liberalism is a religious movement. It's a replacement for the Protestant Christianity that the left works so hard to undermine and destroy. Liberals are speaking the language of faith, albeit a faith without God. This is the main reason that right and left talk past each other, the reason our public debates are so weird and unsatisfying. One side arrives with facts and stats and arguments. The other brags about its decency. One side is trying to convince, the other is trying to convert. You can beat a liberal in an argument, but you can never convince him that you won. He cares much more deeply than you do, and therefore he knows he's right, by definition, and nothing can convince him otherwise. Somewhere tonight, Eric Schneiderman is marinating in his shame, probably unshaven and alone. His career is over, his reputation is destroyed. He faces years of potential legal action. He is a broken man. He is in agony. And yet, on some level, despite all of that, Eric Schneiderman still knows he's a better person than you are. Seth Barron is associate editor of City Journal. He predicted in public on Twitter that Schneiderman would be exposed as a creep, and he said it last November. Yesterday, he tweeted this: "How did I know this and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio didn't?" Great question. We've asked him to come on and explain. Seth Barron joins us tonight. Seth, how did you know that? That was a remarkably prescient tweet last November.
Thanks, Tucker. You know, to me, it was just kind of, I thought it was just an open secret. I'd heard stories and rumors about Schneiderman for years. I'd been told by at least 3 or 4 different people since maybe 2009 that he is into rough sex with women, that he likes to date his staffers and is a little pushy with them, that he tried to kidnap a reporter and wouldn't let her out of his car on the way to, and said he was taking her to his apartment. So I sort of assumed that this was just, you know, common knowledge, more or less. Now, I'm not deeply involved in Albany politics or in New York City Democratic circles. I'm an editor for a moderately conservative magazine.
So you're not exactly in the loop at the highest levels of progressive New York, is what you're saying.
No, exactly. So that's why it seemed strange that everyone was saying, oh my God, this is the craziest thing we've ever heard.
But it's clearly not. I mean, so that you raise a really, I think, central question, which is, if you heard about it, is it plausible that the governor of the state, one of his closest allies, presumably one of his closest friends, Andrew Cuomo, had never heard of it?
It seems implausible to me. I mean, it seems implausible to me that any elected official in New York State hadn't heard it. I don't know what I can say. I mean, Andrew Cuomo has been, you know, steeped in New York State politics for 40 years. He basically has a private army. He keeps tabs on everything and everyone. He's extraordinarily paranoid.
Yes, I know.
So I would imagine that he would know everything that everybody's up to at all times.
He's a thoroughly bizarre person. I've dealt with him. No, I agree. That's exactly the word that comes to mind, and I don't use it lightly. He's paranoid. He's a control person. There's no doubt. So this is a little strange, though, because Schneiderman was the Attorney General. He wasn't just some functionary. He wasn't the night city editor at the Daily News. I mean, he was the chief law enforcement officer of the state. So if there's a suggestion that he kidnapped somebody, you'd think that one of his peers would follow up on it.
Well, you might think so, but at the same time, the New York State Attorney General has unique powers and is an immensely powerful figure. I don't think any Attorney General any state Attorney General across the country has the kind of power that the New York Attorney General does. However, if you notice, over the last few years in New York State and New York City, there's been a lot of corruption investigations.
Yes.
But he has not been leading them. They've all been largely done by the feds. There's trials going on in Albany right now over, Sheldon Silver is going to be retried. Right. A number of Cuomo's associates, just where Joe Prococo was just convicted. This was federal. And in New York City, investigations of Bill de Blasio were largely being done by the federal government.
It's kind of funny. Meanwhile, this guy's suing everyone about global warming.
Global warming,
right.
Or coming up with ways to have pardon-proof indictments of Trump associates, or suing the vitamin industry. Yeah. Or
Meanwhile, the cesspool around him goes unaddressed. Seth, thank you for that dispatch from New York. Not heartening, but fascinating. Thanks.
Thanks, Tucker.
Democrats suppressing abuse claims to cover a political ally is obviously nothing new. In the 1990s, allegations that were a conspiracy, that's what Hillary Clinton said, not take it seriously. Watch.
The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
Okay, so normal people laughed at that. It's a famous piece of tape because it's absurd. And of course, it's a diversion. And yet that remained Hillary Clinton's position for 20 more years. How did she get away with that? Well, with the complicity of our news media. Here's ABC's Tom Lamas. He was quick to dismiss any allegations against Bill Clinton as unfounded. Watch.
In another case, it's about groping and fondling and touching against a woman's will.
And rape.
And rape.
The rape accusation is decades old and discredited.
Decades old, huh? It doesn't matter. And discredited by whom? We never found out from ABC. Here's over at NBC, Andrea Mitchell. Similar view.
Donald Trump using that word unprompted, bringing up a discredited and long-denied accusation against former President Bill Clinton, dating back to 1978 when he was Arkansas Attorney General.
In point of fact, just as a reporter, it was never discredited. And if there was a specific way in which it was discredited, then I suppose those correspondents would have told us what it was. Meanwhile, over at CNN, Brooke Baldwin said, reading from the same script, attacking Bill Clinton as a sexual predator, not acceptable. Watch.
Dozens of women, by the way, that her husband has maligned and assaulted, paying Paula Jones off $850,000 for hush money.
Okay, let's not go there. She has a history of being abusive towards women, specifically the ones that her husband's had extramarital affairs with. So I think it's very hypocritical of her.
That's where you're going to go in the first 20 seconds?
Yeah, let's not go there, bringing up abused women. Please, come on. So yesterday, Heather McDonald's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, a contributing editor at City Journal, one of the great writers in English, I would say, and she joins us tonight. What do you make of this, Heather McDonald?
Well, this is a war, Tucker, and each side, frankly, let's be honest, will protect its own.
That's true.
But what's remarkable is that the left goes so far to protect its own when they already control most of the power centers of our culture. They control the universities, they control the media. So you'd think they could afford to sacrifice a few in the name of principle, but they're holding on to them. What I fear about this moment, one would hope that it would maybe slow down the Me Too movement, and unfortunately it's only going to solidify it. We're going to see growing gender quotas. Of course, there's already calls that the replacement for Schneiderman has to be a female. And we've had male power, male ego, male abuse throughout human history. The solution until the 1960s and the sexual liberation culture was through norms of chivalry and female modesty to try and control that. We decided that that was oppressive and patriarchal. We threw out those norms, and you have this extraordinary behavior on Schneiderman's part, fueled by alcohol, And there's very few norms left, it seems, to control this sort of predatory behavior.
I guess a couple points come to mind. One, did you notice the immediate broadening of the responsibility? Governor Cuomo of New York, first statement, this speaks to the problem that all men pose. This is the fault of all men. That seems to me exactly what you said, which is fuel to continue what is basically a political push called Me Too.
Right. You are going to have the disappearing of men gradually, and it is not going to be a good thing for our culture. There is toxic masculinity is a concept that is embraced by the left. It applies to a few men, not all men. But we are trying to now basically erase the male from our culture, and that's a big mistake.
Can I ask you this? I mean, in the 27 years I've been in the workforce, maybe it's just me, I've seen some terrible male bosses, but it's not always true that female supervisors treat women better than male supervisors do. I just haven't noticed that, to be honest with you, at all, actually.
To the contrary, I think there's somewhat of a consensus in the workplace that female bosses can be absolute hell. And also, let's not pretend for women, and let's not pretend that women do not exploit their sexual attractiveness to the hilt.
When can we stop lying? Is there a date at which we can stop lying, or do we have to keep pretending things?
We can stop lying if universities get back to truth-telling, and we can start being honest about differences between men and women. But to do that, we have to take the universities back, and we certainly have to take the media back.
Amen. Heather McDonald, I never miss a piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
The novel 1984 was published, believe it or not, 70 years ago. Big Brother, though, is still going strong at the University of Michigan. Now a lawsuit trying to restore the First Amendment on that campus. We'll tell you how it's going next.